Today's conversation is about a Rolex scandal, right?
Yes.
That involves one of the most historically important models of any brand of all time. It involves what I think may be fraud and what could be the most collectible piece in the collection moving forward.
And it could be by Rolex.
It could be by Rolex.
Yeah.
What is up, Watch fam? I am Christian, the curator of the Theo and Harris Vintage Watch Shop.
My name is Michael. This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Yep, more on our friends at Squarespace later.
Yes.
Today's conversation is really interesting. It's all revolving around the Rolex GMT. I'll give you the headline, and then we're really going to unpack exactly what's going on here.
Especially because this could all be a lie.
This could all be a lie, or it could be maybe single-handedly the most pivotal moment in modern Rolex, history in their catalog. So here's the headline.
Yes.
Rolex cuts production of their GMT Master Pepsi by 2/3, by 66%.
Which would bring it to the level of essentially what I like to say is the watch doesn't exist. The titanium Yachtmaster, yes, you've seen pictures of it, functionally does not exist. It is virtually impossible to get. It's not even a real watch.
Exactly. So the headline here is Rolex cuts production of their GMT Master 2 in its Pepsi configuration by 2/3, by 66%.
Yow. That is a massive amount. You're going to be handling the marketing side of why they could do that. I'm going to be talking briefly about the manufacturing side, but also we're both going to be talking about the fact that this could all be a lie for clout.
100%. But we're really going to take, a microscope to this and kind of understand whether or not it is true, and if it is, what that possibly means and who could be behind it. I want to start it off with what is basically this historically dark cloud that looms over the GMT Master.
An incredibly successful model, one of the most beautiful, colorful models in Rolex's collection that has never seemed to be finished.
Exactly. Let's start off back in the 1950s when the model was introduced, and it's reference 6542, a reference that has been nicknamed the Pussy Galore because it was the watch worn by James Bond character, sexy villain.
I thought you said that was your nickname in Italy.
What is incredible about this watch at the time was it was developed in collaboration with Pan American Airlines. Okay, it was a complicated watch, unlike the Submariner. It was still an Oyster sports watch, but it was the white collar, right? It was the clean guys,
the dressy version,
exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of the executive's watch. Remember, now traveling, by air is something that is, very pedestrian. Everyone does it. It's not very luxurious. Nothing. I mean, unless you are flying in very, very luxurious circumstances. But back at the time, flying, being a member of the jet set class, was a huge deal. This was a really interesting marketing move. Today, you would never, air travel doesn't really represent much, so you would never release a watch in collaboration, or at least watches of such significance. Today, it would be like the Mars watch, right? So
right.
But air travel, no. It's yesterday's news.
The watch with Delta?
It's weird.
Right.
That's fucking weird.
That's odd.
This era of wristwatches was incredible because the materials were great, and there were problems, right? There were problems. Right,
yeah.
Black dials turned brown, right? Like
very reactive era.
Right. I'm wearing a watch right now, a vintage JLC. This is beautiful. But when this was manufactured, this didn't look just like this. This has aged beautifully, but it is aged, showing age, right? This watch is available in the Theo and Harris Vintage Wrist Watch Shop, by the way. This and a whole bunch of other Rolexes and Pateks and Cartiers, and it's awesome. So go ahead and take a look. I personally curate the whole collection, and you're going to love it. So go take a look at the Theo and Harris Vintage Watch Shop. But that's part of the charm of that era. Yes. Whereas today we expect watches to basically, apart from getting scratched, to look exactly like that forever.
And I would say, in the not so far off future, scratching is also going to be relatively outdated.
I'd love at some point to do a video about that because I'm sure you could probably find a ton of stuff about that.
Yeah.
The problem, the dark cloud first emerged soon after the watch's release because its bezel, which was made of Bakelite, a form of plastic, would essentially break, and they started breaking at rapid rates to the point where Rolex had to send out service replacements, which they replaced with aluminum, and then in their next reference 1675, they just did not have any Bakelite at all. It was all aluminum. There was no more Bakelite. Forget Bakelite. Never bring it up again. It was a disaster.
Which makes me think eventually one day if we want to go to the true design of the GMT, it will be a sapphire bezel with 2 different colors.
Agreed.
Eventually.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Ceramic may be the logical evolution from aluminum, which is
Right.
the sub, but I do think that that sapphire would be incredible for the GMT.
That would
but
be wild.
That's neither here nor there.
Right.
So this dark cloud continued to kind of plague the Rolex GMT and its kind of history of malfunctions with the aluminum. The aluminum bezels, more so than any other bezel at scale. Now, other bezels did fade too, but nothing faded like a GMT bezel. These red and blue, they were just hard colors, I suppose, to dye these bezels with, so they would fade. The blue would go to, basically a really, really light powder, and then the red would often go pink or even just disappear entirely.
Yeah, it would just be silver. Exactly.
That is something that we still love because it's not broken. It's just a visual kind of effect.
Right.
But certainly, it continued this tradition of Rolex not being able to manufacture a Pepsi bezel that actually lasted.
Specifically red, or not even lasted, but yeah, specifically red has always been a big issue.
The GMT remained an incredibly important model to Rolex, basically for forever, right up until the mid 2000s. I believe 2004, or 2005 is when the model was discontinued, and then it remained silent. There was no Pepsi GMT for years. Okay, they released the GMT in black. They released the GMT in gold. Now with ceramic, not aluminum. That was the manufacturer change.
Sure.
And then in 2014, Rolex did reintroduce the GMT in its Pepsi, in its classic Pepsi format. They did not release it in steel, which is what the world wanted. They wanted to tease the world with a solid white gold model. I remember seeing this watch for the first time in the news. I saw one on the subway one time, and it was just so cool because it was under the radar, and it was just like this. It was just such this cool, watch. You'd never seen the Pepsi in the new case, in this new super case with the ceramic. You just never seen it.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
The next year, Rolex did introduce, or next year, 2 years later, Rolex introduced the watch in stainless steel, which then made the Pepsi kind of democratized. So we thought that this was going to be the first, healthy, good Pepsi, right? Ceramic does not fade. We know that the Pepsi is going to be, for the first time in its history, just fine.
Red and blue.
Wrong.
Right?
Rolex, shortly after releasing that first generation of Pepsis, had to go back and make a new bezel. Okay, which they call a Mark II bezel. I've done on the Zero, our podcast community, where we release podcasts every week. I've done a full review of all the different marks: Mark I, Mark II, Mark III, Mark IV, in their kind of like investment categories and all these different contexts. Yeah, and what they may mean for the future of the GMT. But go ahead and take a look at that article. If you're not a member of the Zero already, definitely go sign up. And if you do sign up, shoot me a DM. I can't possibly answer all the YouTube comments, but I can be there for you guys. So go and join and become a member of the Zero. The link is down below. I'm looking forward to seeing you on over there. The Pepsi had its Mark II now. And there were 2 reasons why were speculated, because Rolex would not verify either.
Sure.
2 reasons why this could have happened.
Yes.
The first, maybe the first generation, that Mark I was just too bright. The color was quite vibrant.
Right.
And maybe Rolex said, the pushback that we got, a lot of people said it was too much. Maybe we should go darker. The Mark II is a darker version. The other theory was that Rolex was having a really hard time manufacturing those Mark I bezels. Something about the red bleeding and something about over 70 attempts at producing a bezel would have to happen before one was good enough to enter into the production category.
Wow.
Which is crazy, right? 1 out of 70. I think it was like 74 was the rumor, right? Yep. Insane. So then the Mark II happened. Then the Mark III happened. And even up until now, the Mark IV has happened.
Wow.
Now, the Rolex GMT is offered in white gold. It's also offered in stainless steel on both a Jubilee and an Oyster. It is one of the most important models in Rolex. The retail is around $10,000. The secondhand value is up to $25 at one point. Now it's probably down to like $17. But this is still one of the most historical watches of all time by any brand.
Yes, worn in countless movies by countless famous people. It's always the watch that it seems like celebrities have turned to.
Yep.
And it's the watch, like I said before, from Rolex that is decidedly louder. Of course, you have the OPs, but that's not really the same category as a GMT with a red and blue bezel.
Right, and even the OPs,
And that was also introduced later.
It was introduced later, and it was only in one little collection. The GMT has always been louder. It's always been more fun.
Right.
And it really is. It is just like, I don't think Rolex doesn't own the color black. Rolex owns the Oyster. Rolex owns a Submariner for sure. Anything that looks like it is taken, right? From if it's an Oyster and it's black, it's a Submariner ripoff. Rolex owns red and blue. You cannot use red and blue on a watch together without someone saying, "Oh, that's just it's a GMT on it," right? Like you're just robbing Rolex, right? That is a different level of like the proprietary, truly. Design.
Yeah.
But now rumors have come out that Rolex is cutting down production by 2/3. Okay,
that is crazy.
Literally 66% of the GMT allocation will be gone, and it's already hard to get a GMT. So imagine how difficult it would be if now only one out of every three. Right? It is nuts.
That's enough to completely, almost virtually halt sales of the GMT.
Exactly.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. You probably need a website or domain, and you need to cut off your website or domains.
Everyone here knows that I'm a huge fan of Squarespace. I would not be sitting here today if it hadn't been for Squarespace. When I started my business, I started Theo and Harris back almost 9 years ago. I had no resources. I had no money. I had no ability to build my own website. I had nothing. And you're at an impasse basically, right? Because you can't pay someone to do it, and you can't really do it yourself. I don't know how to code, right? And then someone recommended that I try Squarespace, and I gave it a shot, and it was unbelievable, right? Between their templates that were not just functional but beautiful from day one of Theo and Harris, the company looked like a real company with millions of dollars, right? Because it looked like this incredible, like just beautiful, functional shopping experience, and that was only possible because of Squarespace. So I don't just recommend that you go and join Squarespace and make an account and build a website if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, if you're a budding entrepreneur starting your first website. I'm also talking to everyone out there that has a website, that has a business with an online presence, that you should really take a look at what else is out there, what better is out there. Because I can almost guarantee Squarespace is more beautiful, more functional, and more affordable than wherever you are now. I highly recommend you go ahead and take a look at Squarespace, and that's it. I literally couldn't recommend it enough.
Yeah, and even better, Squarespace now makes it easier than ever to edit the website with their Fluid engine. You can drag and drop text, super easy. You can schedule a blog so you can grow your site. And finally, if you have a retail shop or are going to have a retail shop, you can use Squarespace's point of sales system to integrate right into your website and scale with ease.
Highly recommended.
So if you want to save 10% off your first order of a website or domain, you can go check out the link in our description and use code Theo Harris.
So now that we've reached this point in the conversation,
yes,
tell me your thoughts. Where are you thinking?
Okay, do you want to go why they would do this first, or do you want to debunk this source?
Let's talk about why they would. Let's assume that this is true.
Okay.
And let's talk about that.
Okay. First idea is that it could honestly be a production issue. There could be something going on with just with the ceramic in general. Something that I floated to you before was that possibly, I know with dyeing clothes, you have to do specific dye lots. Like we suggest that you dye 20 shirts at a time, so that way you can sell them in batches of 20, because there's always color variation.
Smart.
So one theory is Rolex is saying, hey, right now, obviously most people don't have two GMTs next to each other, but we're cutting back this color, this shade specifically, because the next lot is coming through.
Right.
And if you have this GMT next to that one, every customer is going to be like, well, why is that one darker than that one?
Right.
The other idea we had is, it seems a little ridiculous at this point. They still haven't gotten the colors right. They're still working on it. And for some reason, to Rolex, that could be negatively affecting sales.
Right.
That seems a bit far-fetched considering that they're sold out the door. But those are the two leading things that we have, besides the one I want to toss over to you, an incredible marketing idea from Rolex. That could be a little scummy, but still would be an incredible idea.
Talk to me.
This idea would be that Rolex says, we have the Daytona, that is our flagship watch. There are lines out the door. We've seen the gray market for all of these. How can we get another Daytona in our line? Not in terms of fame or anything, but in terms of it's impossible to get. I will buy everything and anything to get that watch.
People will buy, hundreds of thousands of dollars in jewelry, or at least $100,000 in jewelry to get allocated Daytona. Now, some of you out there that are watching this have been allocated Daytonas, not spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's just fine.
Yes.
But in many cases, all over the country, probably all over the world, people will do anything for a Daytona. That is insane. I think it's actually insane, but God bless you all. Okay?
Good for you, yes.
Good for you, exactly. Right. And of course it's in Rolex's best interest to do that again. Does Rolex make more money? No, Rolex makes less money. They're allocating fewer, making 1/3 of the GMTs.
Right.
But Rolex understands that money, or really if you exchange the word for value, would skyrocket. If Rolex introduces another watch to the world that no one can get, that solidifies Rolex's, position again as a kingmaker. There's not a fluke. We don't just have one Daytona. It's a Daytona. It's a GMT. You can't get a great Rolex.
They're immovable.
You can't get one.
Right.
That is crazy. So Rolex is functionally doubling this mini catalog of watches that are just, to use the word aspirational is not even accurate, right?
No, yeah.
And keep in mind,
aspirational is that you can go to the store and buy one because you saved up.
Right.
This is a level of you can't really even save up.
Right.
Because if you spend $100,000 on jewelry or something, there's a guy that bought the store out to get that watch.
And think about that. Like, think about this idea of aspiration. Like, think about this idea of aspiration, I suppose. I mean, years ago, 30, 40 years ago, when you would buy an aspirational watch, the only thing standing between you and that watch was money, right?
Sure, yeah.
It was a very simple question. Do I have the money or do I not have the money?
Exactly.
Right? And the more expensive the watch, the more exclusive and aspirational it was. Very simple equation.
Yeah.
That has completely gone out the window now. Now it is a matter of just how hot is that watch? How could you possibly be allocated that watch? That is a totally different thing. Rolexes, in the grand scheme of watches, are not that expensive. Of course, they are expensive, a lot of money, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But, when a regular time-only AP is $27,000 and a regular time-only Rolex is 7 if it's an OP, or 9 if it's or 9.5 if it's a sub. These are very different worlds of money.
Of course, yeah.
Right? So the AP should be the real, that's the rich guy's watch.
Exactly.
But actually, when you factor in like the market desirability, the Rolex is actually even more of a play in many cases, not in all, but
Right.
in general populace, right? The Rolex is actually how did you get that?
Exactly.
With APs historically, you're just like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, right. Right.
That's kind of shiny, When it comes to
polished
Rolex, it's
different.
like, what have you done to get that watch? Do you have can I get one?
Can you hook me up? Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a totally different thing. So, of course, it's in Rolex's best interest in a macro sense to get that allocation.
To increase demand.
To increase
even more.
demand. Exactly.
Yeah. What we talked about and we brought up on this channel many times is that there was a time, COVID really, when watch brands were looking at watches they made and sold for, let's say, $10,000, now selling secondary for $100,000.
It's insane.
And any brand in the world would be like, how do we get some of that?
Right.
How do we snag onto that?
Right.
That is 10 times for one watch.
Yep.
How do we get there?
How do we do that?
And that's what you said, like essentially kingmakers, because now it's like, okay, well, they have to buy that with the whole store. Especially now because Rolex owns ADs. They could be like, well, you have to buy like everything here.
Exactly. Straps, as many of you should know, bring a whole world of potential to mix up your watch collection. They breathe new life into watches. They help you pull out different colors. They give them new personality. Straps can be very addictive. I know people with 2 watches and 10 straps because it adds so many facets to a collection in a fairly easy and fun way. So that's why they become such a part of the Theo and Harris culture and identity. I think we sell more exotic straps than almost anybody because I just love them so much and I love sharing them with you. So assuming that is true, that all makes sense, right? Maybe Rolex actually cannot keep up with the demand. That's possible. Probably not as likely. Even if this 1 out of 73 or 74 bezels is true, I could just keep making the watch, and that's just fine, right?
Yep.
More likely, Rolex understands the larger game at play in knighting a watch and creating another Daytona. That makes sense.
Yes.
I can get behind that.
Is there any other thing you can think of? Because there's always someone in the comments that says something that's like this.
Well, listen, that's a great thing. That's one of the great things about
course, of
public. But no, those are the 2 scenarios that make good sense to me. Okay. But now we should say, is this even true? This is a rumor. This is a rumor that is circulated, was posted publicly by an Instagram account that claimed to have seen the memo from Rolex to an authorized dealer. First of all, let's just start here.
Sure.
If Rolex found out that an authorized dealer partner was leaking memos to
Off with their head.
off with your head. You're in a lot of trouble. You're in a lot of trouble, and it wouldn't be that hard in theory to figure out who it was.
Exactly.
Like, you're Rolex. You have all the power. I mean, they could probably figure out within relative,
pretty quickly.
accuracy, who leaked private memos, assuming assuming it was true and they didn't want it out, which are two assumptions, right?
Of course. Yes.
But now taking a step back and looking at, well, what would be the person's motive to lie, right?
Yeah.
The person is a gray market dealer, right?
You're saying they are.
They are a gray
sure.
market dealer.
Yep.
And possibly, I mean, in theory, certainly, if they start this rumor that GMTs are limited in production, the value of GMTs will go up, and their stock of GMTs, which could be 1, 10, 20, who knows, could increase in value.
Sure.
That makes sense.
Yep.
The problem there is one post on Instagram is not going to change the market
Exactly.
by this kind of random,
right.
gray dealer. I don't think that would change a thing.
Right.
Right? I mean, even in the comment section, people were skeptical. It wasn't hook, line, and sinker. You know what I
Right.
mean?
No one
So
sold
it's a fishing term. You're familiar.
Very.
Michael's father's a fisherman. So that kind of debunks that, right? You're not
Yep.
really going to make any money off of that. What are you going to sell? Maybe one GMT to a sucker
One guy goes,
for too much
"Oh."
money?
Right.
That's possible, but that's not really worth it. More importantly, which I think is just kind of makes sense in this whole era, it's just for clout. It's just to get a video with a bunch of views on it, whether it's true or not.
We saw, I forget the Instagram, but when the Rolex releases were coming last year, they made a whole account like, this is leaked, I found the book, like the book was passed down, it was from the printers, this and that. We made videos on it and everything. And it was just like, at the end they were like, no, I'm just lying. But they made, I think, 11,000, 10,000 followers.
Exactly.
Like that.
It's just clout, and that's a huge currency these days, right? Like it's unbelievable, really. Like clout was like an interesting byproduct a while ago. It was like, oh, if you produce really good content over a long period of time and continually deliver value, you'll have a follower base, blah 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 blah. Now it's just like, if I can actually jump the line if my lies are just so outrageous because goodwill doesn't matter and they're following anyway.
I mean, your post...
Like, remember Anthony, like Timepiece Gentleman? Like, the dude blew up, and you're like, he's doing everything wrong and bad, and he's still doing
he's
well.
Just ripping.
What the
right. Exactly. Well, and then something that wasn't bad, but you were one of the first on Instagram that found the Le Mans GMT?
The
Daytona?
The white gold Daytona with like the Paul Newman subdials.
And that went crazy, right?
That was true. Yeah, it did go nuts. And when I saw it, because funny story.
The only reason you saw it is because you were shopping for white gold
Daytona.
GMTs.
Yeah.
I mean, Daytona.
And I almost didn't post it because I was like, I checked if it was April 1st, like legitimately. I'm like, is Rolex trolling the world?
Right.
But the answer was no. But this idea of verification or goodwill, I mean, that's just not really so important anymore.
Right.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just here. It's with all news sources. Everything is for profit, and everything is. I guess trust is not really a huge part of most businesses anymore.
Right.
Most communication businesses, which is bizarre to think about.
If this guy gets 5,000 followers and 400 unfollow because it wasn't true, it's like
fine.
You got 4,600 followers.
It's fine.
Yeah.
And exactly. What is your vote? This is true or this is not true?
Well, the only other thing that I wanted to float out there was this poor guy that got, or not this poor guy, the poor guy that gave this guy the memo could have gotten a personal email from Rolex that's basically saying, "Hey, we're cutting you're not getting
the risk is
Rolexes
incredible.
anymore."
The risk reward on this is wild. So leaking something, first of all, even those memos that do go out from Rolex to ADs, the amount of people at the AD that see those memos is very limited.
Right.
Like that is for real important people at the dealership.
Right.
It doesn't go out and to everybody via email. It doesn't happen that way. Okay.
Right.
So like the idea of risking your relationship with Rolex over that would be weird. Also, maybe it's just me, not just me, God, but I think that it's a generally good rule of thumb when you've got in a lot of scenarios, but like when you've got a secret, not to shut the up just because it's what you're supposed to do.
Sure.
But also like this could very easily be a trap. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Rolex could just tell you a little bit of a lie, and if it gets back, they know that it was you because they didn't tell it to anybody else. Yeah. And that's how I think all the time. I'm like, I'd love to share that tea, but I'm not going to not for
I'm not
moral
going to be the
reason,
guy, right?
But I could get caught, and that's not good. Like, you know what? Like, I don't need this.
My really final opinion on the entire thing was, one, I don't think Rolex is going to give that information to an AD that's going to do this. I don't even know if that person would have a Rolex AD. if they were the person that's leaking memos to gray dealers and stuff
Right.
like that.
They would have been caught by now, in theory.
You would have eventually been murdered, especially if it gets to a gray dealer. Like, that'd be terrible. I think Rolex sticks with, like, one of our partners, London Jewelers, or our partner, London Jewelers, the juggernauts of the industry, the reliable family-owned business that's going to take the information.
To the grave.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That is not going anywhere. They're not going to be like, oh, send it to this guy on this lane.
A huge part of Rolex's, business is just trustworthiness with their ADs. Like Rolex AD, I've never seen anyone abide like Rolex ADs. Rolex ADs know how much of a stickler Rolex is, how tough they are, how high their standards are, and for consistency and for care and for just everything. And they just know that you can't screw around with Rolex because Rolex will ruin you.
Exactly.
They'll take your living from you, and you can't
exactly.
do that.
That's your whole business.
So you vote true or false?
False. It's a lie.
Okay. I vote within shades of false. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that it is.
Didn't know that was a rule, but okay.
Like, oh, it's cool how you changed the rules.
You're like, I don't want to say it's true or false. I'm kind of right in the middle.
You're like, okay.
Great. It's actually awesome.
So I think it is false. I do not think that they're cutting production by 2/3. I don't think that's true.
Right.
But I do think that it's possible that they're going to decrease supply of GMTs.
Yes.
I believe that. I do believe it's possible that it could be in part production. I think more likely it's a strategy for clout
Sure.
to increase that demand and knight another Rolex like they've done with the Daytona, not to the GMT.
Sure.
And that's possible. And maybe the lie wasn't blatant, but it was rather, the fish was this big, the fish was, they're cutting. Well, how much were they cutting by? I heard like 20%. How much are they cutting by? Like 35%. Dude.
Yeah.
How much are they cutting by? Almost half. Half? You kidding me? How much are they cutting by? Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 60%.
Right, right, exactly.
That's
exactly.
it. That's like 6 hours on the phone. Like it's 5 different calls.
That's
Like
just,
that.
right.
That's it. It happens so quickly. So who knows? But the most important question: let's say you want a GMT.
Sure.
Right. Let's say you've been on the list. You want a GMT. What do you do? Do you roll the dice? Do you poke your AD for information? Do you buy gray? What do you do?
What do I do
GMT?
personally?
Pepsi.
I probably would just wait it out. If it's true, are you saying this is 100% true?
No, I'm saying who the hell knows? Oh,
Yeah.
You know what? Let's say it's true. Let's say we get verification now that it is true that Rolex GMTs will be significantly less available soon. What do you do?
I probably just wait it out and forget about it. And I'm saying that because I am on the list for a Datejust, 2.5 years, 2 years. I'm on the list for the Bubble Dial OP, Celebration Dial OP. I'm not getting those calls.
Right.
And I was really excited about it, but after a while I'm like, forget it. I don't care. I'm never getting that. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. That's interesting.
And I don't
Yeah.
want to be, I'm a sucker if I go gray market.
Right.
Because I'm like, just knowing that guy, say he's getting an extra 5,000 off
Right.
me, I'm like, come on. You know, exactly.
Yeah, totally. I pretty much agree. I mean, I understand. There's nothing wrong with wanting a watch. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with paying a premium for your time, right? Paying even $5,000 over retailing is something that I haven't done. I can understand why someone would do it. They would do it because they don't want to wait 2 years. And I've worked hard, and
Yeah, exactly.
I think big part about working hard is that you don't have to wait for certain things sometimes, and
Sure.
that's sort of logical. That's a logical way to approach it. It doesn't just because you pay a premium doesn't make you a dick, right? Necessarily, That being said, it's not a situation that I think I'd find myself in.
Right.
I'd probably just be like, I guess so be it. But then the other part of it's like, what does that mean? Let's say it is true, and the watches do skyrocket, and then they become not 17,000 but 30,000. It's like, well, I'm not willing to pay that premium for my time,
Right.
for argument's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. I mean,
There's shades of what you want.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's very tough. So the best advice that I would have would be, look in the mirror, right? Not really, but you know what I mean. Be self-reflective and say, I've wanted this watch for a while. Is it really worth it to me to go gray? Hedging or like thinking maybe this is going to happen and it'll become unattainable.
Right.
But it's a GMT. It's not a Daytona. You're going to get allocated one. But I don't know if that's true anymore.
Right. No,
Who
that's
knows?
the move. Right.
Who knows? Yeah. And again, the black cloud has been hovering over the GMT for decades.
Yeah.
Literally since the mid 50s.
Well, here's the last idea. Are they slowing production because there's a new GMT coming?
That's possible too. But what would it be?
I don't know.
I don't know either. What would a new GMT be?
Yeah.
You know?
People think the video is coming to an end. It picks up right back up.
What is a watch fam? We're talking about the 3 rumors about what the next GMT is going to be. But that's it. If you liked this video, like it. If you want more content from us, join our family over on Patreon at The Zero. Link is down below. We release videos every week with different watch experts and industry leaders. Michael comes on once a month. We do live chats once a month. It's an incredible community. We're really loving it. If you love watches, it's definitely a place for you. So click that link down below and join our family, even on a 7-day free trial. If you go further than that, there is a fee. It's a small fee, but we give so much back and store credit that it really is free for everybody. That's not the point. So I hope to see you on over there. And if I do, shoot me over a DM and we'll chat. Bye-bye. Watches are unimportant to the time. They can't speed, slow, or stop it, and our phones tell it better. But as vessels for memories, they know few rivals.